Hello, everyone on the other side of the screen. My name is Lacey Valentina Rodriguez. I am a licensed professional counselor, a national certified counselor, and I completed my master's in counseling as well. And I will be your presenter today from Teacher's Coach. Today's topic is the intersection of psychosocial emotional learning and English as a second language. I'm just going to start with telling you a little bit about myself. So I am originally from the Dominican Republic and I came to the United States as a teenager. So I had actually experienced being in a social emotion in a English as a second language class myself for a couple of semesters. So I'm speaking to you tonight from not only professional but also personal experience. I remember coming to the country and having such a culture shock, and I would go into my ESL class, and that would be a safe space for me. It would be a space for me to connect with other people who were going through the same or similar situations as I did, and we really bonded so well. My teacher was so patient and so helpful. And even though so many years have passed, I remember that being one of my first positive experiences in this transition. So I'm hoping that by the end of today's webinar, you will be able to take home some things to reflect on and to really start practicing some of the topics that we're going to discuss today to enrich your classes even more and to strengthen your relationship with your students as well so that they can better learn what this whole process of adapting to a new kind of like lifestyle. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Tell me if this is in your face when your students say something funny, but you remember that you're a teacher and you got to keep it together. I mean, think about the time that you had a good laughter with your students. Oftentimes, we do got to think about when we need to take a break and just have fun and just enjoy the moment. Sometimes our students just need a break from so much that is happening. And it is so hard at times because there are so many things that we have to accomplish, and there's so many goals that we want for them to, again, accomplish. But at the same time, celebrating the little things, looking at the little things, incorporating humor, incorporating so many different aspects of life into your daily practice can make such a unique experience for you and also for your students. So think about that. The reality is that teaching is not an easy thing to do, especially nowadays where we are dealing with the aftermath of a pandemic. But I wanted to incorporate this quote because I think really speaks to what we'll be discussing today. Teaching kids to count is fine, but teaching them what counts is best. Think about what is your why. Think about what teaching means to you and why do you decided to become an ESL teacher? What drives you every day in the morning? What helps you wake up, get up and push through the day and really do what you do with love and with compassion and finishing the day feeling fulfilled and satisfied that you made a difference in someone's life? The reality is that teaching is not limited to just helping a student learn about how to communicate in English or how to get familiar with the culture and the norms of a whole new society or what it means to live in the United States. As ESL teachers, you have a lot more going on in your classroom. The students in your class are learning far more than that. They're learning about self confidence, they're learning about security, about feeling supported, encouraged. They're learning to trust people. They're learning that they're not the only ones going through situations like the ones they're going through. They're learning to find their voices, to be heard and understood. They're learning to be themselves despite the language barrier. As a person who went through it myself and who experienced what it is to start again, start from zero, and with the experience and expertise that I have, I'm really hoping that today we can really come together and reflect on this topic. If applied consistently, if this is something that you truly believe in, and that by the end of the session you truly understand and want to incorporate into your daily practices, I assure you that your experience and your students' experience is going to go to a whole new level. So, with that being said, who is ready to level up with me today? So, in order for us to dive into psychosocial emotional learning, let's figure out what it means, right? What does that mean? We're very familiar, or I hope you're very familiar with social emotional learning. But psychosocial emotional learning is literally psychosocial emotional learning is literally leveling up. All right. So psych, which a lot of you are familiar with, is basically psychosocial. The definition of psychosocial is basically incorporating psychological factors and social factors. When we're talking and thinking about psychological factors, we're talking about thoughts, emotions, behavior, memory, perception, understanding, and all those psychological elements that are part of our brain and what helps us function as human beings. And then the social factors include the interactions, the relationship with others, with family members, with community members, with friends. So psychosocial is the blend of those two coming together. And then we have social emotional learning, which also have that social component. And social emotional learning really goes beyond just learning about emotions. It's the ability to develop and apply social and emotional skills. It's being able to be aware of yourself, develop self awareness, and not only self, but also social awareness and learning about others. It's being able to establish healthy relationships, making responsible decisions, problem solving, empathizing with others, and really functioning as a human being in our daily experiences. And these are skills that are learned and implemented throughout life, no matter how old a person is. So, if we put those two things together and we think about psychosocial emotional learning, is basically a holistic approach to wellness because it incorporates all areas of a human being's life. It incorporates health, it incorporates wellness, it incorporates our social factors, our psychological factors, our emotional factors. So it is a very holistic approach that helps us really understand how individuals can learn about life and can function in a daily basis. So, one key component of psychosocial emotional learning that is so important, and that's why it's at the peak of this pyramid that you see here, is needs. And this is a concept that is crucial when it comes to understanding what a person's needs are, basically, what they need in order to succeed. So, remember when at the beginning I mentioned that teaching goes beyond the things that you have in front of you or the things that you have to accomplish. There's actually a lot more than that if we're thinking about incorporating psychosocial emotional learning into your practices. So needs are the things that are required in order to be well, in order to feel like we have what it takes to feel safe, what it takes to feel supported, what it takes to be well. So there are so many different kinds of needs that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but that is at the peak of what we are working towards, really understanding and identifying a person's needs. And then there is the protection. So when our needs are not being met, as humans, as individuals, there's those tensions that are created, which leads to emotional barrier, kind of those defensive mechanisms that we develop in order to protect ourselves from those needs not being met. So then we have social emotional learning, which are the skills and methods to get our needs met. So it goes as a full cycle. It is a cycle in which we have our needs. There are protections that we build in order to support us, to help ourselves. But then there is social emotional learning, which are the skills that actually help us get our needs met. All right. Anybody got some needs here? I hope you do. Actually, we all do. We have physical needs, which obviously are the needs of our body, our physical body, psychological needs, as well as social, emotional, and spiritual needs. So that kind of like brings the umbrella of all different aspects of our life. And within each of these elements, there's just so many different things um, that we can be challenged by if our needs are not being met. For example, when it comes to physical needs, our nutrition, do we feel hungry? Do we feel like we are getting the energy, the sources that help us push through with the energy that we need in our bodies? Do we feel supported when it comes to social emotional needs, social needs? Are we supported by our parents? Are we supported by our community? Spiritual needs, are we really looking inwards and feeling fulfilled, feeling like we have a sense of purpose? Psychological needs, do we feel like we are learning and understanding things and remembering things? Those are just very, very basic examples. But each of these categories of needs are very important factors of our daily experiences as individuals. And there are many external factors that can make it difficult if our needs are not being met. So it's important to constantly evaluate our well-being and how we are experiencing the world around us. And that's exactly why we're bringing this to your attention, because your students in your classrooms may have so many unmet needs. And those are things that may be getting in the way of them getting through a lesson, or them giving their putting forth their best effort at any given time. So really having needs kind of like in the back of our minds, it's a key component of psychosocial emotional learning. um, so when it comes to thinking about these needs, one, we I put together this. It's so important to go over this graphic together, because so many components in here are key to an individual really being successful. The mental, emotional, social, and spiritual dimension that really play a very, very important role in overall health, in someone's ability to be healthy. You can see here that there is a complex interaction of an individual's interpretation about all these factors, and they all play such an important role in overall wellness. So, starting with health, with stress, and again, us being building these protective factors to keep us going despite the challenges that we may have. And what you may see in classrooms is the behavior and not necessarily what's behind that. Also, when it comes to needs, we understand that at school, the academic needs are vital and important, and also relationships, wellness, and social emotional learning. And you could see on the corners, the basically those areas, those main components that are sources of contributing to either progress, right, or being able to support kind of like those overall complex interactions of all of these different dimensions. So we have school, we have social media, family, and community, which all are external factors that have a very important role and influence, again, the support that students may need. So now that we kind of went over what psychosocial emotional learning is, then let's go over what it is not, right? Because it is important to highlight what are some things that we don't want you to confuse psychosocial emotional learning with. So, psychosocial emotional learning, it's not a psychotherapy. So, it's not theory to treat any mental health, mental illness, or anything like that. It is more so a frame of work and a model, an approach that can be adapted. To really support students' wellness, to really support adults as well, individuals' wellness. But it's not, again, a psychotherapy treatment. It is also not a grading system. So it's rather part of the student's development, part of understanding students and, again, individuals, I would say, and part of growth and a vital component of their development. Psychosocial emotional learning is not taught at the expense of core subjects, right? It's rather integrated. So, what we're hoping is that as you are, again, teaching English as a second language, that you can incorporate these practices into your school day, into your classes, into the work that you're doing with your students, and make it part of it rather than replacing any of, again, the valuable work that you're doing. And it is not a curriculum, although there are great curriculums out there for social emotional learning, but it can sometimes miss the essence of psychosocial emotional learning. Simply having a curriculum without embracing the meaning, without really understanding and meeting the importance of needs and health and culture and relationship and equity and all of those components of psychosocial emotional learning can miss the mark. So it is not a curriculum, rather is, again, a frame of work. It's a model, it's an approach that can be incorporated into your daily practice. So obviously, when you look at memes on Google, like, you can find anything and everything. But look at this one, right? And now let's talk about psychosocial emotional learning and wellness. The reality is that it is vital that you look into your own experiences as teachers, as adults, and identify your own use of psychosocial emotional well-being for yourself. It starts with you. It's really hard to implement or to pursue something or to teach something that you don't fully understand or that you don't fully embrace. So, kind of like taking a temperature check within yourself and thinking about assessing your own wellness, identify your own well being. How is your life satisfaction? How are you feeling in the moment? How are you feeling right now? Right? Not making assumptions based on what we think or what other things, but actually taking the time to dig deeper and understand and think about some factors that may be impacting our overall wellness. It's also important that you identify what are some unmet needs that you may have, right? What are some things that you may be experiencing in your families, in your marriage, in your friendships, at work, right? Physically, emotionally, spiritually. What are some needs that you feel like you are that you need to be fulfilled that you haven't met? And thinking about your own well-being and what you need in order to be emotionally available for your students, right? As I mentioned, walking into your classroom, you never know what you might find, right? What you have to push through the day. So really understanding where you're at and how what you need in order to be supported, it is extremely helpful because will ultimately not only help you but also help your students as well. It is important to identify what are some stressors that you have in your life and what type of stress you are experiencing, because that will really help identify what you need and what are some interventions or what are some better ways to approach the situation as well. Not all strategies apply to all, right? It's not one size fits all. So these are very individual and very unique experiences that you may be going through. Maybe not your teacher, your partner teacher, or some other people that you may be associated with. It is very individualized and it's based on your own experiences with life. So, hopefully, you took some time to think about your needs. I want you to also think about your students, right? Because ultimately, that's what we're here for. In order to better support your students, first, you got to support yourself, right? But ultimately, what do we need in order to best support our students? So, we're going to dive a little deeper now into behaviors, right? So, think about this list of behaviors and just take a look at it. Which ones out of this list do you feel most off-putting to you? What are some of your pet peeves? What are some things that really get under your skin or that really make it difficult for you to, again, be able to successfully support a student? Think about these behaviors. And looking at the list, obviously, you can see how a lot of them can be perceived or are typically perceived as negative behaviors, right? Obviously, nobody wants to have a lazy student or someone who's impulsive or somebody who feels entitled or, somebody who is a narcissistic or a defiant student, right? But is that all that there is? Is that all? We see the tip of the iceberg. We see the reaction. We see kind of like the aftermath. We see the response of our students through their behavior. When they come to our classroom, when they come to your classroom, they already come in with a big baggage with all the stuff that is underneath. That we don't get to see, right? Because we're not with the students 24/7. We know some things about them, but we don't know everything, right? So underneath that tip of the iceberg, there is those unmet needs. And as you can see, it can be way bigger than what you see in their behaviors. There can be so much that they're carrying, and unfortunately, we find ourselves in situations where we're just responding to the behavior, right? Because it's what we need in the moment in order to get through a lesson. It is what we need in the moment in order to feel like we're supporting the student, right? Addressing those behaviors. And that is extremely important. At the same time, think about behaviors as a messenger, right? Think about a way of your student communicating something to you or some things that are not working well, some things that are underneath that are not revealed. But the way of them communicating that to you is through their behavior. Or some students may be great communicating certain things, but not necessarily everyone has that leverage to have a student who is open about speaking about their unmet needs. There's a huge part that is underneath that we may not see, and it's those needs that are not being met. And sometimes they don't even know what those are, right? Sometimes we don't even know what those are, because we may experience um, experience things differently and may not be completely aware, right, of what those needs are. Oftentimes we may adapt certain things and believe that they are normal, that that's just the norm, when in reality it's not, right? And there is a lot that plays a role with that, cultural differences, values, right? Parental values, and you in such a unique environment where you have students who come from so many different backgrounds, it is really hard. It can be hard to identify needs because, again, there are so many cultural factors that can play a role. But that is a very important thing to keep in mind and to kind of like reflect on as you support your students. What are their unmet needs? So, if we think about these unmet needs, we can really think about a lot of different causes, right, that are underneath the behaviors that we observe in the classroom. It could be relationships, it could be health, right? Dependence, mental health, self harm, trauma, burnout. I mean, there's just so many different factors that can impact an individual. And as I mentioned at the top, at the very beginning, we were talking about protection and them being kind of like ways in which when we don't have an unmet need, when we have an unmet need, those barriers are built and we just try to build some sort of way to protect ourselves, either by avoiding, either by reacting, by showing anger, by isolating ourselves, by projecting onto others. I mean, there's so many different ways in which we can try to protect ourselves when all of these needs are unmet, or some of these. And it can really make it difficult for an individual to be themselves, to be able to learn and enjoy. Obviously, the experiences that are provided at school. So again, here's some examples of protective mechanism and psychosocial emotional learning: denying, avoiding, projecting, blaming, coercing, submitting, surfacing, overpowering, merging, and isolating. And as you can see, these are behaviors that are adapted over time and that actually start to work, and we may feel a sense of accomplishment or a way of us protecting ourselves. And the reality is that the more we employ these protective mechanism, the less, unfortunately, our needs get met, and the more we perceive threats as real. Because then it becomes part of our core beliefs. We're unable to see things for what they are, and instead we create assumptions of the world around us, and that leads our those perceptions and assumptions and beliefs lead the way that we again respond to the world around us, which makes it difficult to get our needs met. So, when we're thinking about how we incorporate psychosocial emotional learning in the classroom, especially as you teach English as a second language, we know that the academics and the skills that you want your students to learn are important, but so are these factors, these needs being met, this wellness, this health components of your students, because the reality is that your students won't be able to really be successful, learn, and be present if they have unmet needs. And so are you. You, as a teacher, having unmet needs and not being able to really feel supported and valued and understood. And again, having all of those different needs met can make it difficult, right? So the goal is to be able to maintain a balance, to really create a balance where both are, one is not more important than other, but they're both equally important and integrated into your practices. Um, so, what are some things that you can, what are just some strategies in the classroom that you can easily incorporate, right? So, think about visuals, about posters, about things that your students can see that can remind them or encourage them to really um, um, be able to harness and really reflect on their feelings, on their emotions, on the things that they need. This could be in the form of quotes, in the form of mantras. For those of you who teach students who are younger, having visuals of different emojis or some feelings and emotions written around. And again, just exploring different concepts that can really inspire your students and yourself to have conversations about their psychosocial emotional experiences in your classroom. Also, checking in. How are you feeling today, teachers? How are you feeling today? It starts with you. What kind of energy are you bringing into your classroom? What are some things that you feel like needed to be accomplished before you came in to teach, that may get in the way of you again being completely available emotionally for yourself and for your students? How are your students feeling? Getting a temperature check, getting really a sense for what are some things that they're bringing into the classroom with them as well. How are they feeling? And I always tell people good and okay, it's not good enough. Okay. So maybe we got to build our emotional literacy, right? Thinking about different emotions that we can use to express what we're really experiencing. And emotions are really complex. We may feel more than two or three emotions at once, and that's perfectly okay. But really having a sense as to what are my students bringing with them every single day, that it's beyond what we can see in the surface. What do you need from me today? Right? Asking your students, what do you need from me today in order to be successful in class? What are some things that you need me to do? And that can vary from student to student. Some students just need some time to decompress, because when they were home, there was something that they experienced that really was triggering, or that, was difficult. Getting up in the morning, right? Or in the bus, if some of your students ride the bus, some things may happen. A lot goes on between the time when students wake up until they make it to your classroom, and let alone if your class is later in the day, right? So a lot went on. So kind of like putting yourself out there and asking that question, what do you need from me today? What are some things that I can be helpful with that may not necessarily be related specifically to English as a second language, but more so about what we're talking about, right? About those specific needs or factors that may be impacting that student. Also, scaling back when necessary, right? Taking breaks, laughing with your students, incorporating humor. I try to be funny, but not all the time. So kids just laugh at me because I'm not funny enough. But that's okay. I'm okay with that, because, again, sometimes we do need to be vulnerable and meet them at their level, and just remember that there is joy in the little things, and that laughing at things, laughing about things appropriately, when appropriately, it is definitely something that can help just take a mental break from a lot that can be happening. So definitely incorporate humor whenever possible and whenever appropriate. And learning more about their home environments, learning more about your students, where are they coming from beyond just their countries, right? Where are you truly coming from? Because, again, each family has different values, different perspectives, different beliefs, different expectations. So it's so helpful and important to really get to know your students individually, what they experience when they go home, what a typical day looks like when they're not with you, when they're at home. Really, again, starting to connect with them at a different level. If you're not already doing this, if you're already doing these things in your class, kudos to you. Keep doing that and keep sharing that with colleagues and coworkers and other teachers, because that is extremely helpful to, again, um, keep that balance between academics and social emotional learning in the classroom. And then here's some really key components when we think about what are some important developmental norms that are important for our kids to be able to develop and to grow into, so that they can be more successful in their academic life, in their academics, and also in life. So I'm not going to go over all of these You can take a look at them, pause the video if you can, or take a screenshot and read over them. But the reality is that this is kind of like a roadmap of some skills that are vital for students to learn, and also for adults as well. Right, as you may notice, I'm not here just talking solely about students. I'm also speaking to you because just as much as your students need support, it is important that you as well receive the support and understand how important these developmental norms and these things apply to you as well. All right. So, balancing the use of the brain and the body. So, understanding that, at times we may make an emotional decision or we may make an irrational decision. So, kind of like thinking about what's behind the choice that I'm making, what's the reason why I'm making a certain choice, and understanding what that implies, thinking about are my decisions or actions driven by cognition or by my emotions in the moment, and really taking a step back and understanding how we can balance both our emotions and as well as our reasoning, and connecting, right, connecting with our feelings, our senses, our wants and needs, and knowing what the difference is between what we want and what we really need. Recognizing that difference is crucial, because oftentimes we may be driven by what we want, but it may not necessarily be what we need. And when children learn that at an early age, they start to listen to their body and interpret those messengers. It can really help them understand and better regulate their emotions. Differentiating self-regulation versus self-control, right? So being able to understand that they can control the choices that they make, and that there is a difference between their emotional modulation and their behavioral inhibition. Understanding how they can learn to soothe themselves, to temper their emotions, the intensity of their emotions, looking beyond anger, beyond all those strong emotions, and more so being able to take control and take actions to better self-regulate. Building capacity to hold feelings in abeyance. So, delayed gratification is, especially nowadays, with how technology has advanced and how we can really get things at the tip of our fingers, it is so hard to really delay gratification. And oftentimes our feelings may be so strong that we want to get things resolved in the moment, right? If I'm angry, I just want to punch somebody, or I just want to flip a table, or I just want to yell at somebody. But really, um, acknowledging their feelings and knowing that things don't have to be resolved in the moment, that it can wait, that they can calm down, that they can feel their feelings, and build resilience, and know that things don't need to be taken care of in the moment, that it can wait a little bit. And that doesn't mean that their feelings and emotions are being neglected. It more so means that, finding the appropriate time to be able to address those feelings and emotions. Improving, right? So being able to build tolerance for distress, right? So when a child can delay gratification, like I mentioned, they will be able to be stronger, to get better, to be resilient, right? To feel okay with the discomfort, right? They can endure and just be able to be stronger, and better handle those things that may be painful, right? But being intentional and constructive about their choices for their actions, that's extremely important. And the last one that I'm going to go over, again, there's just so many. But I want to jump to the end, because more than anything, it is important to model, to take ownership and accountability. All of these are equally important. But as you can see, there's a roadmap, right, of all these different developmental norms that are so important to cultivate and to develop. Modeling ownership and accountability, right? Through the entire process of social emotional development, children need models to help them learn to take responsibility for their thoughts, their feelings, and actions. And that's where you come to play such an important role. You, as adults, parents, administrators, community leaders, right? So children who feel more secure within themselves and safe in their environment learn these more easily. So if you, as an adult, are able to model what these means, to model what balancing is, or to be able to delay gratification, to be able to communicate feelings and emotions when you're stressed, to model taking deep breath, to be able to express again your feelings and emotions. All of that allows students or give them the green light to say, okay, this is okay to do, this is safe to do, and it's something that I see that works, right? It's really difficult when, for their own reasons, adults don't really buy into how important it is to model for students, because maybe they didn't practice it themselves growing up, right? Or that's something that's a skill that they didn't develop, that they're still working on, right? But if we want children to be able to develop these strategies, this skill, and more so develop these norms, right? Because it's beyond this skill, it's understanding the importance of this. It's important that, again, they see that coming from the adult around them. So, I really encourage you to also apply these to yourself, to your own practices, to your own learning, to your own self awareness, so that you can be better models for your students, and they can better feel safe and know that the environment where they're at is welcoming of them, developing and expressing who they are. So looking beyond, right? So we've talked a lot about needs and a lot about the norms, but it is also important to think about putting all of this, incorporating all this in your classroom and beyond that, right? So student engagement is vital. Having students really engage in conversation, to open up, to provide opportunities for them to be themselves, to be active in the classroom. Some students may be more reserved than others, and kind of like finding again that balance and what their strengths are, and helping them really nurture those skills and abilities that they're really good at in your classes. Faculty wellness, in order for you to be the best self you can be, you've got to really look into your wellness, and what are some things that you yourself feel like are not working out for you, and that areas where you feel like you may need more support, right? Making sure that you feel supported, that you feel well, that your needs are being met, and that you're kind of like trying all the time to make sure that you're not neglecting yourself, that you're developing self-care strategies, self-care routines, and keeping a healthy, balanced lifestyle. School climate is vital, right? So it extends beyond your classroom. You can try to incorporate as much of this as you can in your classroom, but if your school doesn't support that overall, which is not your case because you wouldn't be taking this webinar, but the school climate, the culture, um, the the environment, right? What is perceived and experienced in this school day plays an important role. And one part that is extremely important as well is parent support, right? You can't do it all on your own, or the school can't do it all on as an institution, as an organization. It's important to engage parents, to have them understand what are some things that you are trying to accomplish in your class, how you are supporting their students, their kids, and for them to think about ways in which they can be supportive at home, so that there is alignment between um, how you're supporting students at school, but also how parents can again do their part and it can come full circle. So all of these are key components that extend beyond what you can do in the classroom. Some of that you may have control of, some of that you may not, but the reality is that focusing on all of these factors can be really helpful in terms of seeing better results and helping your students be more successful. Building resilience is key. Again, if we focus on the met needs and protective mechanism, self competency, support resources, and acute or chronic stressors, we can really tackle a lot of the factors that may impact a student's experience in at school and also in life. So, how are we doing so far? Right? It's been a long, I don't even know how many minutes we're in, but there have been so many different components that we've discussed. I hope that by now you feel like you're putting the pieces together so far. As you can see on this picture, it is so hard to really think about so many different components if obviously you're limited because you're not with students 24/7. You may not necessarily be able um, to have control over a lot of things, but focus on what you can control. So let's just kind of like recap and look at what are some important pieces that I want you guys to really reflect on. And number one, thinking about students as in the front center of what you do. There is no specific order of these pieces, but it is important to understand that students' situations and experiences in the classroom can be so unique, and you have the power to make those experiences lifelong and lasting. Um, Look beyond what you see in front of you, beyond the behaviors, and more so think about what are those needs that are unmet. What are some things that the students are bringing with them that you can address or help address. Some cultural influences, parental values, core beliefs that your students may be internalizing about themselves, and about the people around them, right? Teachers, you are a key, a vital component. So knowing that is so important that you're taking care of yourself and that you're also reflecting about your own experiences. School climate, again, is another important piece of this puzzle that it's with the hopefully with what you can help promote, right? That the school can adapt some of those things that are best practices and that are making a difference in students. Thinking about needs again as a priority, and we talked about what those are. Thinking about what are the supports that are in place, what are some things that your school offers, what are um, um, some community partners that your school has, some partners that you can kind of bring into your school, and thinking about supporting your students from different aspects, again, to help meet their needs. What are some choices, right? Some choices that can be made and that not only your students can make, but also you can make based on, what goals you have for your students. Also, efficiency, thinking about how effective this can be if applied consistently and if it's something that you really adapt into your daily practices. Looking below the surface, again, thinking about what are those things that you're not seeing in your students, thinking about health as kind of like the overall umbrella, right? What are those factors that can be impacting the overall wellness of your students and of yourself? And again, school administration is a very important part of this puzzle. It's a very important piece because it's really hard and difficult to be able um, to really push an approach to really think about alternative ways to support your students if you don't have the support of your administration, again, which is not the case for you, because otherwise you wouldn't be seeing this webinar. So school administration is extremely important as well, as a piece to this puzzle. So when we think about prevention and intervention, right, looking at health at the top, right, and thinking about the psychological, the psychosocial, and the spiritual elements that are vital in support of the students, right? So if we go down each of these elements, we see social emotional learning, therapy, self help, also the self, the family and relationships. Those are all components that are um, overall helpful to be able to meet the psychological needs of an individual. So other interventions for psychosocial needs to be met, wellness, right, being able I'm sorry, physiological, I keep saying psychosocial, physiological needs, so wellness, taking breaks, understanding kind of like how we need our bodies to be nurtured, checking in with the nurse, making sure that we are getting the nutrition that we need, that we're checking in with a professional, taking care of our immunity, any injuries or vitalities that need to be taken care of. And then spiritual, taking time, taking breaks to meditate, to really look inwards and connect with ourselves, and the community as well. So, thinking about values, purpose, and meaning in our lives. So, we are getting to the end of this presentation, and I didn't want to leave out this very important and helpful resource that actually has, inspires the content that we discussed today. And this is the Whole School Health Through Psychosocial Emotional Learning by Jared Chairs. I probably misspelled his last name, so I apologize. I'm terrible at pronouncing things, hence English is my second language, so please forgive me. but but this is a really helpful resource, and there's a lot more content here that can really expand and enlighten your exploration for psychosocial emotional learning, and what great impact in a positive way that it can make in your daily practices. So thinking about these 15 strategies to jumpstart students and educators health. Remember, overall, it is crucial and important that your needs are being met, and that overall you're well, and that your health is, again, at the forefront of your experiences on a daily basis. And that includes so many different components, so many different factors that are important to pay attention to. So this is it for today. I am glad if you made it through. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep. Hopefully you're still there and really enjoy the content that we discussed today. Please know that it's so important that you live well in order for you to teach well. If you would like more information, here's a resource, a website for you to explore. And if you have any further questions, happy to answer them. You can contact your school administrator, and they will give you our contact information so that we can, answer any questions that you may have, provide you with any additional resources that you may need. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I am looking forward to further opportunities where we can have more discussions like this. You have a wonderful, wonderful time.